Thanks for tuning in to the World XP podcast. If you're enjoying the content, please drop us up, drop a like, and let us know your thoughts below in the comments. Also, please consider supporting our podcast via the link below. It really helps us out. Gerald, welcome to the World XP podcast, man. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me, Eric.
Yeah, for sure. So why don't you do a quick intro, like who you are and what do you do and what your business is, and then we can jump right into it.
Yeah, my name is Gerald Rossen. I'm from Toronto, Canada, and I started a business called HustleHawks, which connects college students to gig jobs around currently New Orleans, but hopefully all around America soon. And started it in my freshman year of college. Took me to a point where I graduated and moved to New Orleans full time to run my business.
Very nice. So, for those of you listening, here's a question from the previous guest. This episode, well, actually, by the time this one's out, you'll know who this is, but he's a wildland firefighter, jumps out of planes and fights wildfires and all sorts of stuff. Said, what is one aspect of your life that brings you the most joy slash fulfillment?
I think entrepreneurship brings me the most joy and fulfillment because a lot of people start businesses in the pursuit of wealth, but I really, as cliche as it is, I don't really think it's the money that motivates people to work 100+ hour weeks. I really think it's in my business's context, knowing that, I'm helping students make extra money on the side and, help them financially and helping the community get help from people that want to help them and really just bringing the community together, that it gives my job a purpose, which fulfills me.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I want to start for you kind of growing up. Did the entrepreneurial like how was life growing up for you? Was it like did you have a lot of the encouragement to do entrepreneurial things like public school? How were your parents, siblings? You have lots of siblings. Like how was the vibe growing up?
No, I have one sister. I wouldn't say I was in the environment to totally, I wasn't born into an entrepreneurship family, so to speak. My mom's a nurse, my dad's an engineer. I found out later on entrepreneurship does run in my family, going back generations, but it's not like, you know, everyone in my family started a business or anything like that at all. I never really intended or thought that I'd have something, at least a business so young in my life. I'm only 22. But I always, looking back, kind of had that hustle mentality. Like I used to resell shoes and clothes and kind of just do whatever side hustle I could. I mean, it's pretty standard and common for like every entrepreneur to start off with like the lemonade stand or selling garbage bags or shoveling driveways. I never really did any of that. I guess reselling shoes and clothes was the closest, but honestly, I just had what I think and thought was a really good idea, and the pandemic and sort of how things unfolded gave me the opportunity to foster it, and I just took a stab at it.
Yeah, that makes total. So was there encouragement from family, parents, friends, family to do one route or the other? Obviously, the cliche here is like, oh, go be a doctor or a lawyer or do any of these like stable, regular jobs that are any of that. And so oftentimes when you pursue something that's like off the beaten path, well, entrepreneurship is not really off the beaten path, but as a parent, a lot of times you'd get pushback from the risk. It's like, oh, well, what if you lose all your money or what if you don't do this or that? How was like going through like middle school, high school when you're reselling shoes and stuff? Where like what's the vibe from parents? Is like go to college, get a job, or is it like we're gonna support you no matter what you want to do?
Well, I was always in school at the time throughout that, and I always prioritized my grades. So it wasn't like I was sacrificing any of that to resell shoes. That was just extra little pocket money. But no, my parents have always been supportive for sure. They've been the most supportive. Honestly, my dad basically works full time with me right now on the business as like a hobby for him on the back end. Like he's an engineer by trade, but he has a lot of business acumen, and he helped fund this business when it started because he believed in me and he thought the idea was genius. So it's been like as much support as I can get. My mom helps out, however she can, or just covers all the other aspects of my life to make sure that I can focus on my business. And even recently, I hired my sister to help with customer support. So like I never intended for this to be a family business, but I just know my family is all very smart and works hard, and I know that they're committed to wanting me and the business to be successful. That they're just the best hires that I could have had, and I could afford them. But I yeah, I guess family and friends, it's hit or miss. Like some people are kind of behind your back jealous or shit on your idea. You know how it is, and
Yeah.
get a lot of backlash or just kind of like criticism from certain people. But I mean, at the end of the day, like you're doing something right if people are kind of talking about you behind your back.
Yeah. How was school? Did you find it boring? Was it like, were you just kind of, you smart enough to get the grades and then you didn't really want to be there? Or did you like it? Or is it, speaking from experiences of people that I know and myself included, school wasn't really like, looking back, I wish I had maybe studied more or gotten more out of it. But at the same time, like the way it was set up was not for me, at least speaking in the US. Obviously, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but were you like going through school? Were you like, yes, school? Or were you like, no, I hate this?
High school and university in Canada, we call it university, not college. We're a little different. Like high school, I got, pretty good grades, and that's kind of when I came more out of my shell socially and had a friend group and was, networking a lot in Toronto, going to different parties and whatnot, kind of just enjoying my youth. College is when I kind of buckled down a little more. I kind of had the philosophy in college to just do the least amount of work possible to average 80%. And then all that extra time I applied to, learning things that are more applicable to real life. Like I was a business major in college, so there's all these stereotypes of like how easy it is. And at my school, it honestly was pretty easy, except for a few classes. So all that extra time once I got my grades was just, learning about stock market and learning about taxes and all the legal crap that goes into running a business and running my business and kind of more applicable things than just theories and frameworks.
Yeah,
Well,
I
still
did this.
having fun when I could. Because
Yeah.
as a business major, it's important to build a network in college. I mean, it didn't totally matter for me now because I moved to a different city and country, frankly, but I think that the network you build in college is more important than the grades for sure.
Yeah. I did something not too dissimilar. What's the least amount of work I can do to get a 3.0, so like all B's,
Yeah.
and then graduate? Um, I think I graduated with like a 2.96, so I wasn't super far off. Um, Okay, so you're in college, your university. When did the idea pop up? Was that something that you had in high school, or was it like what was the need that you saw where you're like, oh, this could be a good idea? Were you doing stuff on the side and you were like, well, this would be a lot easier if I had a platform that I could have other businesses be like, or people be like, oh, I need my driveway shoveled or my lawn mowed or whatever. Like this would make it a lot easier. Was it built out of necessity for you? Like I work with people who build really cool tools and platforms, but they build it to make their own jobs easier rather than as like a, oh, I'm gonna start this grand business.
Right. I think every business comes from a pain point that you or someone experience, but usually you because you're more motivated to fix it. But for me, kind of is the answer. So growing up, I was kind of a moron when it came to moving out of college. So when the first time I moved out from home was going to college when I was 18 in my freshman year. And, I just grew up in a
Still in
household where
Canada?
yeah, still in Canada. Yeah, I grew up in a household where, honestly, I didn't have a lot of chores or tasks. And when I went away for the first time, because a lot of my friends growing up went to overnight camps in the summer and whatnot, but I honestly have never really been away from my parents or home. So I was like, shit, I don't know how to cook, barely know how to do laundry. I don't know how, like, I didn't have to do a yard. I lived in a residence, but like, I just realized I wasn't really tasked with any adult skills, But at the same time, I figured, like, I don't have time for a job either. Like, I want to have money coming in, but classes, extracurriculars, fitness, social life, clubs at school. It's like, how do I fit in a 9 to 2 or a 5 to 11? Like, there's just no 6 hour block of time. So I knew there was a need there, and I knew a lot of other students had that pain point, which is why a lot of students work campus jobs because it's convenient, even though they pay pennies. They don't want to do that for the money. It's their only means of work because it's on campus and they don't have to, commute anywhere. So I knew that students would be interested in a little side hustle type platform that didn't require a car like a DoorDash or Uber Eats would. But at the same time, what the catalyst was for actually coming up with the idea was in the first year of my business school, we had to come up with a new business idea, and we were just paired in groups. And it's a year-long project to make a business model, all these frameworks and theories about this business idea that you come up with. And in my group, I kind of just thought it had to be a focus for students. So I was like, okay, side hustle. And my school mascot name was the Golden Hawks. So I was like, oh, it's like a side hustle for the Golden Hawks, Hustle Hawks. At the time, we just called it Hustle Hawk, but that's not really relevant. But in any case, that was the idea. Students doing side hustles, but at the time it was mainly for students. So it's like if a moron like me that can't do the laundry, I could hire a student to do it for me. But then I realized, in the school project context, that was fine. But if this was ever going to work in real life, that would never be a feasible solution because not enough students have, including myself. I just thought it'd be nice to have a student do my laundry, but I didn't have the funds to just pay someone to do that. Like I would have had to figure it out and shrink things in the process. So it's like the students weren't the ones that could actually afford to delegate certain tasks, but I knew that people around the community could. So I was like, I'm onto something here. Like people need occasional help. They trust their local students, and students have the 2 hour windows to get jobs done. So that's kind of how it came up. I kind of experienced both pain points. I experienced the pain point of not having time to do tasks that need to be done, like the dishes, and not having long enough time windows to have a part-time job.
So, okay, so you're in this group and you come up with this idea and you're kind of forming the idea. In my head, well, I'll just ask you, did you ever have like a let me keep some of the ideas to myself for not the project in case I actually want to do this and like I don't want somebody to steal it? Was that ever a consideration or were you like, well, these are all morons like me, none of them will ever actually do this, so it's fine. Like where was the moment or situation where instead of okay, this is a good project and it's a good idea to let me actually put some dollars and time behind making this a reality?
It was the pandemic, honestly. And honestly, I loved my group. They were good people and we worked really well together in the school context, but I think they always knew, and it was, kind of my idea for the project and I ironed out all the little kinks, but I think they knew that I always wanted to run with it in some capacity. And when I told my dad about the idea, he loved it. And he actually bought the URL hustlehawks.com like way before I made it real, just in case, which is funny. But um once we finished the project, which we were semifinalists in out of the whole cohort of students that were
Who
doing
won?
this,
What won? What idea won?
I don't know. I think it was I don't want to say stupid because it's rude, but I think it's stupid. It was like some erasable highlighter. Like, honestly, my school was very progressive and anything that had a social impact context, the school was all over, I guess, for PR reasons or whatnot. So, idea that
Interesting.
had like sustainable highlighter that erases without you having to, you know,
It's
kill
almost
trees.
like a business school would be happier with a business idea that actually turned into a real business. Um,
God forbid
anyways,
you help
I
the students make money and save you save trees with a highlighter. Um, but no, I in that project you could have just had any idea, like a chair that saves the oceans. Like it's just like theoretical. It didn't really make sense.
okay, okay. Anyway, keep going.
But yeah, so we go through this project, and then the pandemic happened. So this was my freshman year of college, and school's just shut down now. Everything's online, exams are online. We're sent home from campus. And I know you said you're in DC. I'm sure it was bad there at one point, but the COVID landscape in Canada, specifically Ontario, which is our province, the Canadian state equivalent, and then my city, Toronto. Um, my campus was in Waterloo, but that whole area of Ontario, that region, was the most locked down part
Yeah,
of
I
the whole
heard
of
news
the
was filtering down through like Twitter and other things that
we
Canada was
had
all,
Yeah,
yeah.
like parts of Canada had curfews. I went to a park to work out at 1 in the morning, and a cop told me if I didn't stop doing pull-ups, I'd get arrested or detained. Like my gym was shut down for a year. Every restaurant and bar was closed. You had to wear a mask walking into the restaurant, but then once you order your food, COVID goes away, and then you could take off your mask. Like it was bad. Um, and it put a dampen on the college experience. But for me, it worked out because it gave me all this time to start the business because everything was online and online school was a joke. So every student was just getting straight A's. Going back to what I said before, the least amount of work to get an 80%, I was putting in like an hour of school a day, if that. Like it was such a joke. And then I basically had full-time hour capacity to work on my business. So I don't think if COVID happened and school went online, I'd honestly have my business today because I ramped it up throughout my college tenure to a point where it made sense to me to move to the US. But I don't know if I would have done that fresh out of school from the beginning. Maybe I would have, but it would have been a different story. So COVID was what really happened that allowed me to make it real. And then my parents supported me and we got it done.
Yeah, I think COVID made or broke a lot of people. Like for me, this wouldn't exist if it wasn't for COVID, this podcast and a few of the other like side businesses that I'm doing now. Um, Private soccer trainings and things of that nature wouldn't have been a thing if it wasn't for COVID. Um, and yeah, so I wanted so part of the reason, well, let me rephrase. I'm interested in what obviously you have the mindset to say, okay, I've got all this time, I'm going to do something productive with it. At the same time, I'm sure you had friends that were like, oh, I have all this time. That means I can play video games for forever, and their lives went kind of down the toilet. How did you have those people close to you? Did you have I had the situation of like, hey man, what are you doing with your life? Like pick yourself up and do something. And then a lot of friend groups kind of splintered and people went their separate ways. Did you have that I don't know if reckoning is the right word, but that kind of okay, this is not good for me, like where you're going with your life. I need to push you away or like okay, you're doing something productive, like let's talk more. Did you have that reshifting of your personal life as well?
I think so. I mean, I think everyone needs some sort of work-life balance. So, I hear stories of people like, oh, this my guy friend's going on a trajectory that, isn't doing X, Y, and Z like I am. I'm cutting him off. Like I think that's kind of stupid and exaggeratory. Like I don't think that needs to be done. For me, it was like, if I work 12 hours in a day and then I decide I want to go to the gym or play basketball or even play FIFA with friends online, it's like you can still do that. It's just, maybe it's distancing us a little bit because I don't have time to do that 12 hours a day and I'm focusing on something else. But I think my friends, honestly, the ones that I've been friends with for, close to a decade, they all kind of knew how passionate I was about this. And, those ones supported me. It was the ones that were more friendly and like associated with that were the ones that were kind of shitting on it. But, it kind of just shows you who your real friends are, the ones that actually want to see you win and not just want you to follow their path, if you will.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I was getting at. So, yeah. Okay, so your dad buys the URL and what's the framework in your head of okay, I've got this idea. We connect people that need their lawn mowed or whatever, this fence fixed or this or that. And you've got a couple so that it was it always meant to be? I guess it was always meant to be online, but like, are you a software person or how did you end up? How did the framework of like, okay, I need somebody to make this website or I need somebody was is it an app or a website?
App.
Or it,
Yeah.
okay, so where did the how did walk me through that process of okay, I need to make an app. I don't know how to code. Um, how do I do that?
Well, let me ask you, if you wanted to build an app and you had no idea what to do, what would you start with?
Google or YouTube.
I literally Googled how to build an app. Like that's how this all started. Like I had no idea. It was just an idea. And um I don't really think of us as a technology or software company. Like the app is just the means to facilitate the marketplace. Like at its basic level, this could be a spreadsheet with someone just behind it, but the app was more professional, robust, automatic way to make it work on a day to day. But yeah, so I literally just Googled how to build an app, went down that rabbit hole, spent hundreds of hours researching and all that. And I realized the first step was kind of to mock up how you wanted it to be and how to look. So I researched every single marketplace app that I thought was interesting or had some elements of their interface that I thought were user friendly and aesthetic. So, I'm looking at TaskRabbit, I'm looking at Airbnb, I'm looking at Uber, I'm looking at Instacart, like you name it, I'm looking at it and kind of pulled elements and ideas that I liked from each, put it into kind of I don't know how deep you want to get down this rabbit hole because this could be a
Go
whole.
go down go down the rabbit hole.
But we had kind of wire diagrams, but at first I was drawing them out, like sketching them on like Microsoft OneNote, which is like Microsoft Paint, just drawing out a screen. So I would have a screen, like sign up, log in, like that screen, an arrow, which leads, if you press that button, it goes to this. If you press that button, it goes. And I literally like basically drew out every single screen that anyone would ever see when they're on my app, which took, maybe a month or two. probably a month. And then the next step was to design it in Figma, which is a graphic software. There's a bunch, but Figma is, I think, right now pretty much the go-to. So I hired someone from Fiverr. Are you familiar with Fiverr?
Yeah.
So Fiverr helped me a lot at the early stages of my business, just because it's affordable, delegation. And one advice I'd give to people wanting to start out is that when they delegate something, like what I really think of it as is I didn't know how to use Figma. I could have learned how to use it, but this guy's been doing it for a decade and he's a pro with it. Plus, he has that artistic touch and eye. I do not. So I knew that and I was self-aware enough to realize that I should delegate this. But I'm not the type of guy to be like, hey, this is my mock-up of all the screens. Make it pretty and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Like every single minute that guy was working on it, I was on the phone with him so that there was no bounce back. Hey, revise this. Like we were doing it live. And I have some funny stories about that too, because he spoke Spanish primarily. Like he was English was a second language, and sometimes there's a language barrier there. So I'm like copy and pasting stuff on Google Translate to like translating it and like sending it to him. Like we were really grinding it out. Um, and it was funny. There's one screen in the app has like a student, kind of like a superhero figure, and he was a little bit of like a chubbier guy in the graphic, and I was trying to make him look more fit, like you're hustling, like you're ready to go. And then I was like, make him fit, make him. He's like, didn't understand, and I just yelled out six pack, and he goes, oh okay, and then he makes the guy shred. It was funny. But yeah, so actively delegate. Got the screens done in Figma, so the interface was done, and I did a good job designing the screens out originally when I did the wire framing by hand because it was almost like 100% translated exactly into Figma. Like there weren't a lot of deviations. And then from there, Bubble, I don't have you heard of bubble.io?
Mm-mm.
A Bubble at the time when I started this in 2020 was I guess I just get a little free ad to Bubble. Bubble's amazing. It's this company that does no code apps. So typically years ago, the analogy I kind of give is if you want to build a website, 15 years ago, it's this huge iterative process, coding and all that. Now you can build a website on Squarespace or Wix in 5 minutes with a template or whatnot. That's kind of where the app space is going. So Bubble removed all the syntax and code and Python and all those languages from coding. And you really just drag and drop elements, click in English what you want them to do, and all the code's behind the scenes. So you don't have to be a programmer. Again, I
Mm.
couldn't learn how to use Bubble would have taken me a while and I wouldn't have been as good. But there's a guy that's been doing it for a decade. He does it full time. And at the time, Bubble was new. So he was one of the top guys in the world because it's a very niche skill to have. So he was affordable and he liked our project. And again, we actively delegated. Every minute this guy was turning those Figma screens into the app, we were on the phone with. And when I say we, I mean me and my father. So we built it out with him. That whole process, you think when you're starting a business, especially an app, oh, we'll be ready in 3 months to launch. It took like 2 years. Like it takes a while to actually get it right. There's always bugs, there's always kinks. Having a marketplace app where you have the students, which we call the hustlers, and the customers, which we call the hawks, all in one app where you have to go between the different user point of views and reply to jobs and there's timers involved and payments being transferred. Like it's confusing, it's complex, and there's a lot of bugs and things you have to iron out. So it took us 2 years. Um, and then yeah, that's kind of the process from like how to build an app to having it working. So to summarize, it's really just ironing out your idea, drawing out the different screens and the different processes at a very detailed level. Like I don't have it with me, but I have drawings that I drew out of what the job board would look like. That if you saw the app today and the job board, you would totally see the resemblance. Like it's like almost to a T perfect. So not half-assing it, going all in on that, designing it professionally with graphics, and then making those graphics actually work and be dynamic by being able to press the buttons on the App Store.
How helpful was your dad when you're talking to these other professionals of whether it's the bubble guy or the graphics guy? Um, you at this point would have been what, 20, 19, 20, something like that.
Yeah.
So how helpful is he in like interfacing in a quote professional type manner and you kind of learning or I because obviously you have to tell them what you want.
Right.
But there's also ways to interact that with like other professionals or you're paying somebody to do something for you where in the business world you kind of you learn by experience a little bit. And so for you being 1920. Not that you don't have the ability to communicate what you want. There's also like the unwritten code of, I don't know, behavior, conduct, or whatever. That's not really like, do you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, 100%. Um, it helped a lot. Like again, he was all in on the idea. He's all in on me and, his belief in terms of what we could build this into. And obviously we still have a long way to go, but um, it helped to have an adult there. I guess there's an age thing. Maybe they don't think you could afford their help, or you don't know what you want, or this is kind of just like a hobby project, but kind of having him there, and he's very smart when it comes to how data needs to be structured and the whole engineer. And because people see an app and they're like, oh, it's pretty and it works. There's a whole database back end that you never interact with that really is
Yeah.
the roots of the business that you would just have no idea, like how, robust and how everything connects. Like that's really where the business becomes valuable. So he knew everything that needed to go into that. And I think as they got to know me more, they kind of respected, my business acumen and what I was trying to do here. So it was built over trust. But again, if we initially hop on a Zoom call and you see some 19-year-old kid by himself, he's like, I want to build an app. It's like, okay, next. You know what I mean? It's like they don't think it's
Yeah.
a serious endeavor, but he definitely helped. And even nowadays, when I'm meeting with certain people from a sales call perspective, like having an adult there helps a lot too.
I assume that there were days, well, maybe this is a poor assumption. I'm going to assume that there were days where you were like, right, you're building an app and you think it's going to take 3 months, but you're a year and a half in and you're like, oh, we still have to do all these other things. Like,
Yep.
how was that for you? And I know probably part of the answer is going to be you're passionate about the project and you know the pain points of the other students and you want it to succeed, but like, so were you able to take yourself out of the today sucks and into the big picture, or did it take you some time to be able to do that?
Good question. Yeah, you always want it to go faster than it is, and I think everything takes longer than you think because it's your first go around. Like you've never done it before. If I'd started another app today, if I wanted to, like I could probably do the whole process a little faster. But again, every project's different. I have friends now that are starting businesses that are kind of at the point I was 3 years ago, like ironing out their product before they launch it. And, I remember them bouncing ideas off me and they'd be like, oh, we'll be ready to launch in 3 months. We're projecting to have this amount. I was like, dude, 2 more years until you're there. Like, not to shit on you or your idea. You just have no idea how long this is going to take. And now that they're going through it, and it's been 8 months, they're like, you're right. Like, I didn't foresee how long this would take. And it has nothing to do with the entrepreneur. It's just things take time. You don't want to rush something out that isn't good. So, um, there were days obviously where you're discouraged and maybe a bug appears that wasn't there before that's like fatal and you're just like damn I don't know if I'll ever have a working app and I think the broader scope here is really just the roller coaster of entrepreneurship, which I'm sure you can relate to with your side businesses. It's tough, man. Like it's something that I've had to work on a lot, staying level headed and just taking the good with the bad. Like I always tell people one day 5 good things can happen. And I think I'm going to be a billionaire. Like, I'm just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then the next day, all 5 of those developments go to shit and 3 more bad things happen. And it's like, fuck, like, do I have to shut this down? Those are extremes, but the point is every day has its own ups and downs, and I'm just really trying to stay level headed through it all. But the main thing is you're always going to have a roller coaster with entrepreneurship. But what I think about now is like what used to get me so hyped up 3 years ago wouldn't even make me smile now. And what used to ruin my day 3 years ago, like I wouldn't even lose a second of sleep over it. So it's like you're always having those ups and downs. You just want the trend line to be going up. So yeah, I was always patient and I always believed in myself and kind of just knew I'd get to this point. I would just figure it out. It's kind of the confidence I have in, my work ethic and ability and my team and my family. But at the same time, I mean, there's so many external factors that and lucky breaks I've had. I think people create their own luck, but I've still had a lot of luck that made things happen the way it did. Like we found Bubble when they were just starting out with 100,000 users. And because of that, it was such a niche skill, as I was saying, that I was paying my developer very affordably that I was able to build this app for a price that people's jaws drop for how cheap you're able to bootstrap this for, given how well it works and how robust it is. Like people spend 30, 40, 50 times as much on development than we did. And then on a month to month, they're spending way more than we are because we use Bubble. So I got lucky that I found Bubble at that early stage because now they have millions of users and they raised $100 million in venture-backed capital. But again, me and my father, we did those hundreds of hours of research to find something like the Bubble exists. So um, the answer is it's tough staying level-headed and you always have those doubts, but I think hard work always prevails.
Did you always have that temperament, or was that something that you had to work at? Was that something that you had growing up with, like the ups and downs of just general, like when you're a teenager, sometimes days are
Yeah,
sucky and then other times they're great. Or did you always have that temperament, or was that something that you had to figure out about yourself and look yourself in the mirror and be like, okay, if I'm gonna do this, I can't be hating my life if one bad thing happens, or I can't be thinking I'm a billionaire because one thing worked. Like, did you have to look yourself in the mirror and fix that, or was that something that just naturally came? Like, did you have that temperament always?
I think I was always a little bit, I don't know if emotional is the right word, but easily swayed up or down. So
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely wasn't always level-headed, and I'm still working on it, truly am. But I think that, yeah, it was just one of those things. You kind of look in the mirror and you're like, you're right. If I am gonna have a business, there's gonna be some shitty fucking days where everything feels like it's going to hell. And then there's gonna be some really good days where, again, I feel like I'm on my path to being successful. So I kind of just had an epiphany where I was like, I just need to not smile or frown. Like you want to enjoy the good and you want to acknowledge the bad, but I really just have to keep going and just have faith that if I just keep showing up, that it'll just work itself out. Going back to what I said with the roller coaster, like as long as the trend line is going that way, um, it's going to happen. And there's really ups and downs in all facets of the business. Like even at the highest level, our monthly sales, like it goes up and down because there's seasonality. Like during the summer, which we're about to get into, a lot of students go home to their hometown, and there's not a lot of events in New Orleans because it's so damn hot outside. So we're probably going to have some down months. I know that. I'm level-headed about it, but months ago, it probably would have made me pissed off for a week. So I'm really trying to get better at that.
Okay, so you're working with these guys, the app is coming along, your dad is helping out with the database and stuff on the back end. Are you marketing to potential I don't know if employers is the right word, but people that need people that need the help yet? Or how's the like marketing going for, okay, are you walking down different campuses and being like, hey, we've got this thing, if you want to make side money, sign up here, and then like how are you going about getting both sides of the transaction?
Yeah, so this was the interesting part. So kind of going into it, I was like assigned roles with my father. He'd kind of be behind the scenes helping with the engineering side. I'd be the face, the sales and marketing. And once we have a working app, it's my job to, monetize it and grow the sales. So I was still in college at this point. I would say it's my junior year, end of junior year. We kind of have a working app where we can start promoting. So the first step, kind of going back to what I said, how to build an app, it's where to launch it. Like a lot of people are saying, launch it in Waterloo, Ontario, which was my college town, which is just an hour west of Toronto, where I'm from. And I was like, there's me and my dad were like, there's no way we're launching it here. Like, wasn't the biggest fan of Canada at the time. COVID kind of put a damper on how I
Yeah,
felt.
getting arrested for doing pull-ups, etc. Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, my school was like, oh, you should launch it here. I didn't want to. There's a few reasons why. Obviously, that I didn't want to be in Canada long term. Another reason, strategically, if you launch a business in your home market and you go to any investor, they just think you got lucky because they're not lucky, but they're like, yeah, of course you blew it up on your campus. You know everyone there. Like, what happens when you go somewhere else where no one knows who you are? It just answers a lot of questions, just jumping straight into the deep end. And then another thing, there's some strategic things like we let the customer set the price for the jobs on our app, and the minimum wage in Ontario is so damn high that it wouldn't have been competitive with what they could get at a grocery store. So going to a state in the US where minimum wage was low was important. So there's all these different dynamics to it. And at the time in college, I was in the co-op program, which I don't think they do in America, or maybe they call it something else. But essentially, I was in a cohort out of the business students where every other semester we were placed in an internship that they basically arranged for us. So my first one, I worked at Milwaukee Tool, like the power tools, and I was doing marketing for them. But then my second one, I was like, HustleHawks is kind of picking up in terms of development. Let me work on my business full time for 4 months while I'm in school. And the only way to do that was to join the business incubator at my school, which did offer me some mentorship and support for sure. So I was able to work on it 4 months, which is when it really picked up because I didn't even have to balance it with school at all. But at this time, when the app's done, I'm really just deciding where to launch, and I chose New Orleans. out of everywhere in America. And people always ask me why, because I don't have you ever been to New Orleans?
Yeah.
It's a cool city. It's a very unique city. There's no city in America like it at
Yep.
all. But the reason why I chose New Orleans is people think I just threw a dart on a map and it just landed here. Like what really happened was there's a lot of colleges here, so there's a lot of campuses, a lot of students.
Hmm.
There's a lot of festivals here. So again, when I was in college and it was a business project idea, it was students helping students. Now I opened it up to the community. So it could be Sally down the street that wants her lawn mowed, or as we've been pivoting to recently, it could be a food vendor at a festival that needs an extra, worker for that day. So New Orleans has like the most festivals in America.
Yeah.
Like every weekend there's something going on. Any noun in the dictionary, you put fest after it and it exists. So there's always something going on. All these people need cleanup crews, setup, food vendors, stage crews. Like there's all these things. So that was another reason. Again, state minimum wage was low. You could just keep going down the ladder. There's so many reasons why the city made sense. And selfishly, I wanted to launch in a city that'd be fun to live in too. I didn't want to like move to like a flyover state. So
Yeah, that's
it
a
kind
good
of,
idea.
yeah. So chose New Orleans. And at the time, once I made that decision with my dad, I was like, okay, it would be nice to get some traction before I moved down there after school. So at least I could justify the move a little more. So again, going back to the hard work thing, I emailed hundreds of students that were like campus ambassadors on campus and whatnot, hundreds of students. And I was kind of asking them if they wanted to work with me remotely. And at the time, it's weird. Like you're getting this email from this random Canadian guy that's never been to New Orleans, that has this idea to start a business there, doesn't know a single person in the city. And 99% of them ignore me. I got a couple bites, started networking a little more with the students, and got some very, very small initial traction. So that's how I was getting the student side. I was emailing students, paying them to spread the word. On the customer side, there's all these online mom Facebook groups. So I'm like messaging hundreds of moms a day, being like, hey, I'm this random dude from Canada. I have this business idea. I want to have students, help out the community. Can I pay you like for your first job just so you could try it and tell me what you think? Like very, very early days, just bootstrapping it, texting everyone. It was tough. I mean, it's really hard when you're not there in person. So that's how it kind of was at the beginning until September 2022. I went to New Orleans for a month with my dad. We rented an Airbnb and what ended up being a really sketchy neighborhood. New Orleans, if you don't know, is one of the most dangerous cities in America. So we weren't in the best neighborhood, but it was a cool fucking experience, man. Like just seeing the city for the first time and meeting some of the people that I've connected with online and kind of like realizing like in that month, like this is future home for me and I've never been here before, but like we're just gonna figure it out. Like it was really, really eye-opening.
Did
We
you feel
met
like
some.
you fit? Did you feel like you fit right away? Right, that's a big
I don't
change.
know. I mean, Tulane is the big school in the city. And one thing I will say about New Orleans, and my favorite thing about the city, and people are like, oh, the music's great. The food's amazing. The food is amazing. But it really is the people, like the Southern hospitality here. And people say Canadians are super nice. I mean, I think Canada's kind of losing touch with its origin and culture. Like the people in New Orleans and just the South in general, but I could really speak on New Orleans, are the nicest people that I've ever met. Like, I have so many stories and experiences of people just like breaking their back for me, doing anything they could to help my business with nothing in return, didn't want anything back. I've been like basically adopted by this very successful um author and senior down here who is mentoring me and she's very, in tune with the market. And we have dinner a few times a week. Like just like people that are just opening their arms and doors for me. Which I always reflect like if I was a student at Tulane in New Orleans that randomly wanted to launch his business in Toronto, there is no way I'd get a sliver of the support that I've gotten from the city here. So when you get that sort of love and compassion from the city, it motivates you to work harder, but it also um, helps grow the business. I mean, people want to help me, and I just want to give back to them through helping make the city a better place. So I did feel like it could be home, but again, it's at the same time, like I tell people everything I love about New Orleans is what I don't like about it too. Like again, it's not safe, it's very wacky. There's always something weird going on. Like coming from Toronto, which is a big corporate downtown culture, like downtown New Orleans is the French Quarter. Like it doesn't even feel
Yep.
like a place sometimes.
No,
Um,
that yes, that's fact.
so yeah, it was like this could feel like home, but it would be interesting. But now that I've lived here, I honestly love it. And yeah, it's just been received really well. So we were there for a month, kind of building the initial. user base. Again, I was like you said earlier, I was on colleges recruiting students, trying to get some initial traction, and I was only there for 1 month, so I left, went back to school. New semester started. Our sales were growing a little bit, but again, it was like early days. Like we were making only like a few $100s a month. We were trying to validate we had something, but again, nothing to live off of by any means. Went back for a week here and there. I think I made 3 trips before I moved here, and it kind of just came to a point at the end of my college tenure where I was like talking to my parents, and I was like, "This business will not work in New Orleans anyway unless I move there. Like I have to be there in person, working full time, meeting people, networking, going on campuses, making those connections. Like there's no way I can get a student to do it for me remotely by paying them minimum wage. It's just never going to happen. I have to be the one to do it." And just honestly, man, just couraged it up, moved down here. Didn't know us. I knew a couple of people from my past trips, but really didn't know anyone. Lived with guys I didn't know. I just arrived and had a 4 month lease, um, and just got to work. And that was in August of 2023. So I've been here ever since, and it's just been growing month by month.
So were the first employer people the like the moms that you were messaging, or how did you go about getting that side of the equation, right? You talk about people that um are running these festivals and all sorts. Usually they have their own ways of bringing cleanup crews, or like the city has a cleanup crew or whatever. So how did you break into that part?
Yeah, so that was a recent development. So you're right. At the beginning, it was just the moms and the people around that I could reach through Facebook.
Did you get a lot of hits with that early, or was it more? And also, is this all coming out of your own like savings at this point? Or like you're paying someone, be like, hey, I'll pay for the first job just to see how the app works, or I'll pay X student to go talk about my app on campus or whatever. Is this all coming out of your savings, or like,
My savings, my dad's funds, like we own half and half each. So, when he helped me fund it, I gave him half the company. So, we own all of it in our family, but it's not me that owns 100. But yeah, that's how it was. And at the beginning, it had to be that way because, you're getting a random message from a kid on Facebook and I'm trying to explain my story and what I'm trying to do. And now I'm asking to just spend money. Like it sounds like a scam. Like I literally want to tell them, like, you tell me what you need. I'll find a student to help you and I'll cover it. Just tell me if the app works, you like it, and you think this is something that moms could use. Because I didn't, at that point, I hadn't been to New Orleans. So I didn't know how this would be received at all. So it really was me just trying to facilitate both sides of the marketplace in the beginning. But I'm trying to remember the first part of your question. Yeah, so at the beginning it was just moms. The businesses and the crews and the food vendors didn't happen until much later, a year and a half later,
well,
truly.
then
Like,
just walk through the development of you developing your employer side.
yeah, so the employer side started with the families, and the reason why I started with the families is because their needs are infrequent and they only need one person at a time in most cases, unless it's a moving job, maybe they need two or three, but typically it's like I need Susan to tutor my kid or babysit or John to do the yard. So that was easier to fulfill. And fulfillment's really the whole brains of this business. If I fill jobs, I make money. If I don't, I don't. So at the time, maybe I have 30 students signed up. So it's like, how the hell am I going to go to a cleaning crew and tell them I can get 10 people? Like I only have 30, that one would be available if they're interested. So that's how it started. As I moved here and I grew the student pool, like now we have over 1,000 students signed up. Granted, they're not all active, but even if 100 and 200 are, and a food vendor like they're using us today needs 5 people, I can get them that because the students make $100, they get free food, and they get to work a festival that they probably wouldn't have paid the ticket to go to if they weren't working it. So that kind of developed because I had the students to be able to offer them something. I had the numbers. Secondly, I don't know how it is in other cities, but in New Orleans, the whole temp worker scene, like the people that just get hired for the day to work these events, isn't the best. Like I keep hearing from these businesses that a lot of them come drunk, high, late, early, not in the right attire. They don't show up at all. Like anything but what you want. Like literally anything except what you're expecting. When I tell them that they can hire students, students come with that aura of they're trying to make a, you know, education for themselves and a career for themselves.
Less risky.
Yeah, and younger, good energy, welcoming, want to, greet people at the festival. Like it's just a better look for them. So it wasn't really going after the venues themselves. A lot of the case, it's like a lot of the times it would be, a food vendor gets a contract to work somewhere and they need extra people. Instead of going through a staffing company, they go through us. Or if you're that staffing company that has a contract to deliver 300 people and you're scraping, the bottom of your barrel in terms of like the people that you don't think would do a good job, instead you would just subcontract it and get like 10 people from us. So that's kind of how that came about. And that's really been an important pivot because that's honestly where most of the money is made. If Sally needs her dog walked once a week for 30 bucks, we take 25%. So if it's 40 bucks, I'm making 10 bucks. Like I would need thousands of Sallies to be able to make a living. Whereas if it's a food vendor or a cleanup crew that needs 10 people for a 4-day festival at $200 a person each day, it's like now we're talking. So it was kind of a pivot that had to be made. But it really wasn't feasible until I had my student count higher. So it kind of came over time.
Does that bring us up to close to today, or have there been any other developments within the business, or were you pivoting? Like, are you trying to avoid becoming like just another temp agency,
I
or
am. Yeah, yeah, I am trying to avoid that. I've had meetings with people that are like, "Oh, you should narrow down on the type of service you guys do. Like, just become a yard company or a moving company or a temp company." But there's no way of doing that. Like, that's where all the money's coming in from is the sales. What separates us from all these other labor companies is it's only students, and we verify that with their student email, and it'll only ever be students. We're not going to open it up to others, and that's because we're able to build relationships with the schools and. People in the community want to work with students. Like, there's another reason why we launched it in New Orleans. I don't know what it's like in DC, but at least up north in Canada, there's no pride for their local universities. Like no one cares what school you go to. Like in the South, I think it stems from athletics and the SEC, like
yeah,
Alabama.
yeah.
Like all those schools, people just bleed the colors of the campus. The alumni are so passionate, and you'll have like a mansion, like a $10 million house with like a school flag on the front door. Like you'll never see that up north. And when you tell these people that they can hire now the current students to do things for them, like it's a lot more attractive than just a random guy that's like middle aged that it's just weird. Like they want to hire students and support students. There's a trust and comfort that comes with that, especially when you're letting them in your house, especially with your kids, right? So I guess the business scene. I don't want to become a temp at all. It was really just, it's always going to be students. We're always going to let the customer set the price, which is another differentiating factor. Like if you want to call an Uber, Uber tells you what the price will be. Imagine you could say, I want to go from this place to this place. I'll only pay 20 bucks. Is there a driver that will take me? Like that's kind of the change that we're doing.
Mm.
Uh, so the truth is, I don't want to become one thing or another. I always wanted to just be, if you need help and you want to hire a student, hit up HustleHawks, but it could be a wide range of services. I guess maybe over time I'll have to focus on one more than the other, but at this moment, it's kind of just open to anything.
When I graduated, I still had access to my student email for maybe another year and some change. I don't know why. Maybe it was an IT error. But when people graduate, do you boot them off?
No.
So how have you thought about that? Like if somebody's 4 years out of school and they still have their account, like they're not a student anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about it. It's not the biggest priority to me. The truth is, not every student's 18 to 24. Like, there's a community college here that a lot of people try to make a second chance for themselves at their life and go back to school. And our oldest student, who's also one of our best, is 52, and she is a
Fair
first.
enough.
So we don't be we try not to be ageist. Like it really, the typical when you think of a student, you think of some 20-year-old, person with juggling a bunch of things, maybe an athlete, maybe worked at summer camps her whole life. Like that's what you think of, and we have a lot of those types of people. But at the same time, some of these older community college students are some of the best. So it's a good question. I mean,
Not even about the age thing, but just like
I
if you
know, I know,
want
out of school. Yeah, I mean, we don't kick people off if they're good workers and they were students at the time. We'll keep giving them work, but um, yeah, I mean, as
to,
long
yeah,
as you,
fair enough. I was just curious.
I know it's a good question. I've thought about it. I just don't think it's a pressing issue.
The only other question I had on the business itself, well, there's one kind of on the business itself, and then we'll jump into like future things. But when you talk about somebody needs to be like a babysitter for the kids or whatever, do you have any security controls in place for like obviously they've got their student email, but do you have anything past that for like the like verifying?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, So it's a common question I get all the time because, excuse me, yeah, if you want someone in your yard, maybe you don't care about the background check and whatnot. They're just, weeding in the back. But yeah, if you want someone with their kids, there's certain precautions there. So there's a few. Firstly, every student has a picture, so you can at least know the person that shows up is the picture that they had in the app. Secondly, everyone has ratings and reviews. So when a student replies to your job, you're choosing the student you want. It's not like Uber that says Joe will be there in 4 minutes. It's like you'll see the list of all the students that replied, and you'll have those conversations in app messaging and then extend the offer to the one that you think would be the best fit. So at least you're
Mm.
on the person you chose. But before you choose, you'll see the student's profile. They have a written bio like, hi, I'm Ashley. I'm a second year student. I'm majoring in nursing. I've done this. Like they have all that. So at least you can learn more about them. And then they have their ratings and reviews. So you'll see what they were rated, but you'll also see what they were reviewed for. So like if Gerald was a 5-star hustler, but all of his jobs were dog walking, and now I'm telling you I want to clean your rental, like you may be like, okay, like you have good ratings, but have you ever cleaned before? Like you're able to see the context of how they got that rating. So that's another one. We give the students the option to background check themselves. That was a decision I made early on. I didn't want to mandate background checks. I think it's annoying when you sign up for an app and it's like, pay for your own background check. It'll take 2 weeks and we'll get back to you. It's like, it's just so discouraging to sign up. And it's just like, you just want to make money today. And I wanted that to be the pitch to students. It's like, at the time, we had a 3-day payout turnaround, but now we have instant payouts with our payment processor. So I could literally go to a campus and tell students, you can sign up right now, do a job this afternoon, and get the money in your account this evening. And students, it's like, you know how when you're kind of broke and you're younger and you Google how to make money today and you see all these sketchy online surveys or whatever.
Yeah.
Like we truly are for students the fastest way to make money. Like you can sign up and walk a dog today and have $30 within 2 hours. There's no 2-week turnaround you'll hear from us. And that's what happens when you have the background check mandate. So I didn't want to have that from the beginning. So we give the students the option to background check themselves. We give them the steps to do that. And when they do it, they get a little verification badge, think like an Instagram blue check, like you have that on your profile. And so parents can see that. And if that matters to them, they can like request that you get it done before they hire you or hire the student that has it done already. But again, it's not mandated. And then the best form of precaution that I tell parents, because the truth is you could pass a background check but still be a complete fucking weirdo. Like I can not be a criminal, but you may not want me around your kids or another student. Like it's just like it doesn't mean anything. Like sure, you haven't killed anyone, but why? What makes you a good babysitter? So
Yeah.
what I tell parents is we have a task called the meetup task where you can meet your student that you're thinking about hiring at a public space like a Starbucks or whatnot, and then post the follow-up jobs from there. Now, the common question I get asked when I tell people that is what's stopping them from cutting you out? Like they meet the student, there's like, I'll give you cash and help me. Because again, we're taking a cut off the job in the app. So I want to keep everything on the app. The truth is, it happens a little bit, but because the customer's setting their price anyway, there's not a big incentive to pay outside. Plus, we have all these security insurance policies that, you know, we can only deal with and cover if they're dealt in the app. And then, both users know if we find out about it or we see phone numbers exchanged in the chats because we can monitor all of that. We send a warning out. Like if we know that people are cutting us out, we have to remove them because it's against our terms. And the thing with students is there's so much turnover. I mean, they get a new job, they go to a different school, summer comes. Like if they're not around and you need someone in a pinch and you lost that privilege, that whole network of students over trying to save a few bucks, like a lot of parents don't want to do that. Plus, they want to support us and the brand. So that's kind of how we deal with safety and security in a nutshell.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I think those are all good things, good ideas. Um, okay, what's next for you guys? You looking to expand cities? You looking to really establish a more firm base in New Orleans? What's the like if everything went according to plan, which it never does, but if everything went according to plan, where would you and HustleHawks be in like, I don't know, 5 years?
Yeah, so establishing a bigger base in New Orleans for sure is the immediate plan. The next market I want to go to is Austin, Texas.
I was gonna suggest that after we were talking. Yeah, yeah. There's lots of yeah.
The reason why, I've never been, I just hear people love it.
It's a great city. I've been there as well, yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to visit. Again, never been, but you have UT right smack down the middle of Austin. So you have the student side. There's other schools there too. Again, big festival scene, which I found that's important for this to work. There is a wealthy, you know, group of people, affluent neighborhoods and whatnot. I think it would work really well, and I want to stay in the Gulf South and just the southern parts of the states again because there's that pride for athletics and the local schools and people in Texas love UT. Um, thing is with Austin again, like I have to make more money in New Orleans, establish New Orleans more. I think the biggest problem I'll have growing my business is scaling it in the sense that I will need someone doing what I do in a day in New Orleans as I do it in Austin, and I think finding the right person and finding the right incentive for them will be tough. But it's something I'll have to figure out when I get there. I wanted to deal with Baton Rouge and LSU in that area in Louisiana, but it's a smaller market, although LSU is a big school. The city of Baton Rouge is really not as lucrative as another city like Austin. I think it's important to prove that I could have it going at two different states at one time instead of two different cities within a small state. So that's next. In 5 years, if all goes well, we're all over the South, helping students make money the same day they sign up and providing an affordable option for people around the cities that we operate in to get some great help from students.
Fair enough. That's a good wrapping up sales pitch there. Any last nickels, or I guess where can, if people wanted to find you or the app, where should they go?
Yeah, so our website, hustlehawks.com, is just like a promotional landing page talking a bit more about what we do. Our app, HustleHawks, is out on the App Store and Google Play Store, so you can download it and check it out. Although if you're not in New Orleans, it probably won't have much use to you, as that's really the only place where the marketplace is functioning right now. Me personally, my email is Gerald, Gerald, at hustlehawks.com, HUSTLE, the word hustle, HAWKS.com, hustlehawks.com. You can reach out to me for any inquiry, really. That's the best way to reach me. Also, LinkedIn is good. It's just my name, Gerald Rossen. And yeah, I think that's about it in terms of the best places to keep up to date with what we're doing and how to reach me directly.
Sounds great. Any last nickels for the people listening?
Yeah, thank you, Eric, for having me. I'm glad we got connected, and you're a really good host. And I look forward to seeing where your podcast goes. And I'll definitely check out some episodes because I'm a big podcast guy. Like every time I go for walks or work out or play golf or whatever I do to take my mind off my business, I'm not a big music guy. I usually listen to podcasts instead. So I'll definitely check out some episodes.
Fair enough. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. Best of luck with the business, of course. And for those listening, we'll see you guys next time. Peace.